What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Luke's Mind Power. I have another amazing guest with me today. Her name is Neshea Hoshing, and she is a wellness educator and skincare therapist specializing in botanical-based skincare, superfoods, and essential oils. She's passionate about educating families on natural solutions to everyday wellness needs. She spends her time leading her global team of wellness advocates, and by teaching them to create their own wellness business with her proven system. She's currently working on initiatives to bring additional resources and support into the GTA area for those in need in the BIPOC communities. Neshea, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a blessing to have you here.
Hey, Luke, thank you so much for having me. I'm like a huge fan, as you know, so I was like totally excited when you said let's do an interview. I was like, yeah, let's do it. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I don't know. We've been connected for a while now, so it's
Yeah,
great to finally be able to share this space and share
yeah,
our stories. Because I know everybody's been through something to get to where they are now, and I believe that it is through the power of this kind of platform that people can tune in and be inspired and know that they're not alone, and that if you can get through something very difficult in your life, then there's hope for others. And it's changed my life, the inspirational journey of following other successful individuals and hearing their story, where they came from to where they are now. And it's sometimes even you question it, because you look at the success and you get intimidated. You get afraid, and you think like, that's not possible. That something, they must have got lucky. you know
yeah.
so how does that connect with your journey?
Yeah, no, I love that because I actually have been working more on sharing my story publicly. I would always share it just really intimately with my friends, and like they knew me because they're our friends. They see what you go through, and maybe they don't always understand everything, but they definitely were very close with me, so they knew my struggles and they knew how I overcame it. And I actually have been working on sharing my story more publicly outside of just my circle of friends, because I think it's easy, like you said, it's easy when you look at somebody who's successful and somebody who maybe from the outside, you look and you say they have a family, they have this, they have that, all these things that maybe other people measure as success. And it's so easy for you to tell yourself stories as to how that person became successful. Like you said, like maybe they got lucky, or maybe they come from a rich family, or maybe they have this, maybe they have that. And it's almost like it looks like their life was just set up to be successful.
Yeah.
But like I definitely can say that was not at all how I started. And so I started realizing, especially the other day, I had just shared a story about some of my financial woes 8 years ago. And I shared a picture on Instagram, and I was just actually taking time to reflect at my life now, and how I have the whole picture perfect family. And I was like kind of just in this like awe of like, how did this all happen, even though I know how it happened, but it was taking that moment to reflect on it. And I actually intentionally try to take moments like that where I feel into it and I sit into it and I have those moments of appreciation, rather than just being like, oh yeah, that's cool, I have this. Like I literally was like, wow, this is like amazing. And just like I was just in so much gratitude. And from that place, I was like, I heard like, internally my spirit was just like, you have to share more. You have to share more, because if you don't share, people don't understand that you went through a lot to get there, and it was not easy. Like, in fact, my life was the complete opposite of
So
what I have now, right? So
let's go back to
sure.
that dark period of
Yeah.
what you had to overcome,
Hmm.
because that's I know that now that's your power. You do live in gratitude because you appreciate what you went through and where you are now. And
Hmm.
so take us there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think my life is a whole story of overcoming. And that's one thing I learned, that it's like I definitely now believe in the process of surrender. That's when I'm at the place where I'm like, when things start feeling like, you know, that show from before, Punked, where it's like you got punked, somebody's trying to punk you, I would be like, okay, God, you're trying to punk me. Like, life cannot be this bad. Like, everything was just at one point in my life, like one thing after another. So going back, I would say, well, first I was in a really not so healthy relationship. And I think we had connected a little bit before about that. I was in a not so healthy relationship, and that relationship really allowed me to realize not only my worth, but it allowed me to realize that people can manipulate you and control you, but at the internal, like your internal spirit, like you always have control of that. And I always had I always had this like ability to, you know, I guess I would say I had a lot of tolerance. I was sharing this in like pre-interviewed. I had a lot of tolerance for things, and that's probably one of my internal blessings, but it's also something that I realized, like, not everybody has that. Like, I can stick through a lot. And so early on, I ended up, my first serious relationship was very controlling and very controlling, to the point like where all of my clothes were decided for, how I wore my hair was decided for. And there was no lack of financials. Like, I was spoiled, and everything came with you know, contingencies. And so I started having this hateful relationship with money. And I started thinking that this person was just buying me, and this person was, you know, this person was just like finding ways. Just give me 1 second. My husband has him. Yeah, it was like, for me, I felt like at the time that I had to learn like my own voice. Like, I never spoke up. And where that came from was when I was younger, my mom was, you know, very controlling and very abusive to me. And that's where a lot of it started, was I didn't have that voice. I didn't have that ability to speak up for myself. So I naturally didn't realize at the time, but I naturally attracted people that were very controlling because I didn't make choices for myself. It was easy. And I, you know, younger, you know, you're young, you're pretty, you have a smile on your face. And, you know, I was always taught smile through everything. And so people all, like, they gravitated to me. Like, I just like sucked them in. Like, it didn't matter. You could like any type of abuse, it seemed like I stuck around for it. And so those were like my early days. But I definitely, it was my first relationship, my romantic relationship, that ended up being my husband. And that's when I learned, like, this happened for a reason. Like, I attracted it. I didn't put myself in victimhood. Like, I very much was like, this is something that this can't just happen, that my mom was this way and this person is this way. Like, I literally married like exactly the same person that I came from my home. So I'm like, this has to come from me. And that's when I started paying attention really to, you know, the thoughts and our own beliefs around ourselves, because I didn't think that it happened by chance. And I was very much like realizing and taking the ownership to my life at that point. And that was around 26 at the time. And and I remember, like, naturally at 26, you want to go out and you want to have friends and you want to party and you want to this and you want to that. And I didn't have any of that ability. I was really confined to my home and confined to, you know, the beautiful surroundings that I had. Because, you know, when I was married, I had everything. Like, to be completely honest, I had a credit card that had a $5,000 limit, and I had all the new clothes, and I had, you know, pardon me, I had new purses, and my hair was always done, and I had no limit to that. But it also meant that I couldn't have my friends over, and my own family couldn't come over without, you know, scheduling a visit. And it was all like a narrative from the outside. And that's one thing I realized, that people try to control the narrative. They try to control what you see and what they perceive of your life. And I started realizing that every time we went out of the house, he was, and this is my ex-husband, he kept trying to control this narrative around my life. And I was like, I didn't have an opportunity to even speak to the people. That's how limited I was from the outside world. And then what was really, I guess, you know, the lesson was after I had my son. And when I had my son, that was actually, Luke, the first time I had choices in my life. because I had this little baby who I had to be the one who was in charge of him. And my husband at the time did not want anything. He didn't want to decide when he had to eat, what he had to wear. And I couldn't even control what I could wear, but I could control and choose what my little baby could wear. And that was the first time I felt like almost empowered. And I started speaking up more after I had my little guy, because I realized that if I cannot even speak up for myself, this little baby who came into my life that I'm now responsible for gave me all this power. I had like, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I have to leave the house because I have doctor's appointments. And it was like, okay, well, you go and do that. And all of a sudden I was like, for the first time in like my adulthood, able to leave the house. You know what I'm saying? Like everything was so controlled. And from that point on, I got a taste of what it's like to feel empowered. I got a taste of what it's like to make choices for myself and not worry if I was going to upset that person. And that was really, really empowering, because I had to decide for myself what was best. And I made this very scary decision, the very scary decision, that I wasn't going to live that way anymore. I wasn't going to let people tell me or control me. I wasn't going to let the nice things that I had, you know, decide whether I was going to stay. And that's the thing, when I had nothing, I had no access to any finances. I didn't even have a car in my name. I didn't have a bank account in my name. I had no access to anything. And I basically decided that I was going to get a job.
So
I was
how
going to
did
get a
you,
job.
what was the point where you decided did you decide to leave, or?
Oh, well, first I had to set up a plan. And the plan was, first I had to get a job because we had built businesses together. My ex-husband and I had built businesses together. And so I knew that he was going to keep those. I knew that he had no plan on allowing me to, you know, live off of that lifestyle that we had created. He was going to take that for himself. And so my plan was, you know, the exit plan, the exit plan was to find a way that I, like, what do you need, right? When you have money, you have choices. And this is when I started to change my relationship with money, because I didn't actually have any relationship with money. If you think about it, in the sense that I didn't have any relationship where money was just in my bank account and I can choose how to spend it, and I can choose. If you think about it, the way that I was with money was the exact same relationship that my husband had with me. It was the same way, like everything mirrored itself. And I was like, okay, if I have money, I can have choices. And when I told my ex-husband that I was going to get a job, he was not happy. He was not happy. In fact, he actually, Luke, you know what he did? 3 months after I was there, he called me one day and he said, "Hey, what's your favorite car?" And then at the time it was a truck, because I was into like dirt biking and all this stuff like that. And he was like, "Okay, what color?" And I said, "Well, white." And then he's like, "Awesome. Like, what color interior?" And I was like, "I don't know. Like, I'm into tan leather." "Awesome. Okay, cool." Hangs up the phone. 2 hours later, he shows up to my job with a red bow, and that truck was right out front of my employer. And he said, "Come, let's go for a ride." I'm like, "Okay." So obviously when you go for a ride, you're excited. It's a new car. He's like, "It's yours." And I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, on one condition." And what's the condition? What do you think it is, Luke?
You quit your job.
You quit your job. So I did it. I quit my job. And after 4 weeks, Luke, I was home and I was miserable. And I said, "I can't do that." And I said, "You'll never control me again. You'll never buy me again." I said, "I've learned my lesson." And the thing that I did is I had really good relationships with my employer. And when I was going to quit, I said to my employer, "I'll be back." I said, I'm leaving, but I'll be back, and don't hire anybody. I'll be back. And that's exactly what I did. And so that was my start to freedom. A little bit rebellious, a little bit, you know, most people would say that, you know, you're going against, you know, your husband and all this stuff. But I really didn't have any other choice. I was trying to create a better life for myself. I was trying to create something that allowed me to feel empowered and allowed me to feel like I had choices and to feel like I was living, you know, my life. I wasn't living my life. I was literally somebody's, you know, mariachi puppet. You know, they were
Mm.
just, you know, telling me where to go and what to do and how to look. And yeah.
Yeah, I feel you
Yeah.
there. I resonate with you. I also, you know, had a relationship with someone who was quite wealthy, and uh, it it was something that I was really infatuated with for a long time, because I really felt the power of the money. I really felt like, you know, I was in this new reality of success, and I had everything that I wanted, you know,
Mm-hmm.
all the labels and the nice car and the nice watches, but I wasn't free.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Exactly.
I wasn't me. I felt like, you know, I could have this stuff, but I had to live a certain way. I had to do certain things in order for her to be happier, or for her to be
Mm-hmm.
more satisfied, because I'm kind of going in the direction that she wanted me to go in, you know. And I mean, some of the experiences were interesting, and you could say positive, because she was kind of pushing me, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and she was like, you can do better, you can do this, you can do that. But eventually it made me realize that, you know, I have my own, you know, decision making. I have my own mind. I have my own ability to make my own choices, and I wasn't ready for someone to come into my life and to yeah, like control me in that way. And I did. I felt it, you know. And so eventually, after a couple of years, I decided to leave, and nothing to do with everything that I had gained in terms of materialism would hold me, would keep me there. I didn't care about it anymore. I would rather be broke
Mm-hmm.
than to be in that relationship.
Yeah.
And the moment that I did that, I set myself free, and it was liberating.
Yes. I feel that. Absolutely. Yeah.
So
And that's
yeah.
this, I call that the surrender moment. And when I coach people, I ask them, I'm like, take me to that moment where you knew no matter what that you couldn't there, it couldn't not only get any worse, but you had like it was enough. Like there was just you just weren't having it anymore. And those surrender moments, those moments when you literally like it switches to like feeling like you don't have any power. And as soon as you surrender, you switch to this moment, like you mentioned, of total freedom. And the scariest thing is before you get to that moment, you don't know that that moment exists.
Yeah.
Like you don't know. And it's like, it's not like, oh, I'll just be free. It's just like, no, because you're in a comfort zone. You're in a lifestyle. You're in, you know, there's so many decisions. There's so many things going through your mind. And you take that exact same surrender moment and you could apply that to many things in your life. And when I work with people, that's exactly what I say. It's like somewhere in your lifetime, you've had that moment. Go back to that moment. How did you navigate through that? Because for me, when I say I had my surrender moment, that's me like letting like higher source, God, universe, whatever you want to say, take over. Because it's no longer me. I'm no longer, I'm just a human being having this experience. And I know at that point that whatever lesson I'm supposed to learn from that experience has happened. I'm like, yep, I got it. Yep, I need to be empowered. I need to speak up. I need to increase my relationship with money. I need to this, I need to that. I'm just all in this awareness of all the things that I can control.
Mm.
It has nothing to do with that person, that individual. They're perfect how they are, right?
Yep.
Although I'm sure we can probably find all the belief systems and stuff like that. But let's just say that they're perfect how they are.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, we cannot change anybody else. We can only change ourselves,
That's right.
right? And that's what I was saying. Even when I was a little girl, to go back to that, I had the exact same situation, and I had not. It was not lavish at all. Let's just take that part out. It was not lavish at all. It was very humble. But I had the same control. I had the same control. So that control was my normal. It felt safe to me. And when I had somebody making decisions for me, that was at the time, it was what I knew and what I was comfortable with. That's why I ended up in another relationship like that, right? And so Now I don't attract those people because first of all, when people meet me, they're like, oh, this woman knows what she wants. So I'm like a nightmare for people that are like maybe narcissistic or have tendencies to want to control, because the last person that they're going to tell what to do is me. And I can spot them right away. And usually when I do spot them right away, if they're around my friends or around this or that, it's not even like I have to warn them. They're just like, oh, Nisha's your friend. They just kind of exit that person's life. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, and yeah, it kind of feels really good. And I've helped a lot of other friends and mostly women, I would say, out of narcissistic relationships, or even identify those patterns as to why they attract those people. Like, why does that person come into your life? They're there to serve a need. They're there to serve a purpose. Why are they there in the first place? Like, let's take a look at that. And a lot of times it's a lot of the same thing. It's just patterns, behaviors, and
Yeah.
it's what we know, right?
Mm.
So it's
Yeah,
definitely empowering
absolutely.
to be on the other side. Yeah.
Well, it's, I was just thinking about, as you're speaking about, I guess the pain and the discomfort and the disappointment in the fact that you have to go through something like that to learn
Mm.
from it and to actually experience it,
Mm-hmm.
because in the moment, for anyone who's listening and for anyone who's watching and who may be in a similar situation where you feel like you're handcuffed.
Oh yeah.
You don't feel like there's a way out. For me, while I was in that relationship as well, it also was about showing off. It also was about, look at me, I'm in this relation, I've got all these different things, I've got money, I've got nice things to show off, and it was also a bit of a status thing, because it made me feel better. It made me feel better as a person at that time,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't have my own self-worth. I didn't have my own
Oh yeah.
success, let's say. I didn't have that
Yeah.
within myself. I didn't
Mm.
have my own feeling of, I am enough. And
Yeah.
so I fed off her wealth.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the people around me that I was serving, my friends and my environment, that I was worrying about, because then I was being in a sense where people around you, they influence you, so you want to be like them, and so you get influenced by them, and whatever you're going through in your life, you kind of want to show that you're also doing well.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not on that lower level. So that was something that, yeah, definitely stopped me from being myself. And so it took me a little bit of time again to go through that. Again, the ego was
Mm-hmm.
very in control there as well, because it was like, yeah, you got money, you got a nice car, you got a nice watch,
Yeah.
expensive clothes and all that kind of stuff. You're living the dream, you live in the life now.
Yeah.
So the ego was happy,
Mm-hmm.
but the heart wasn't. But
Yeah.
again, you have to go through those experiences in order to get to where you are now. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a powerful thing, but just thinking about, like, you're talking about relationships and
Yeah. Sure.
and people who are in relationships, and it's the foundation, right? It's the effort, it's the creation of what you do when you're in that relationship, and what you build. So once you build that foundation, you build that kind of wealth or that status of who you are as a couple, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
then you realize that, wow, this is, it could be the same thing in business. You build something, or you partner with people, you get to a certain point, and then you realize that your heart's not in it. There's something missing. There's something that's not right. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
is the challenge that people go through, in actually not caring about what other people think, and actually being intuitively connected with their spirit,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
then being able to have that courage to go, this is not right for me, even though I've given and I've created and I've manifested
Mm-hmm.
everything. This is not right for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what anyone thinks. I got to go. I got to do my
Yeah.
thing. I need my freedom. I need to focus on myself. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why is it so hard? How can we allow people? Is it just these seeds that we need to plant by doing interviews like this, so that people wake up and they go, you know what?
Yeah.
You can do it.
Well, what's really interesting is we're always being mirrored by people around us. And so um, when we have, these people that are, in our life, they're there to allow us to grow as a person. But a lot of times people don't realize that. We all don't realize that we've attracted these people into our life. We just think that people come into our life. Now that I do everything from a place of consciousness, and I do everything from a place of like heart-centered and
Mm,
intuition and is it right? I can't, it's almost like, walking around in a room with the lights off versus walking around with the room with the lights on. You're awake. You can see now because all the objects that are in the room are all apparent. You can see them all. And so when you actually take time, and that's what is actually very scary for people, to take the time to reflect, to take the time to take ownership. And actually, one of the things that I love talking about is relationships, very much so. And one of the things that I did in January, so before all of this COVID, we had like a little women's event and get together with women, and we were just talking about like just our hearts, and it was a heart-centered conversation. And I had made rules for us women to get together, and I said nobody's talking about the problem, we're just talking about the solution, and we're talking about what we learned from the lesson of this person being in our life. And it was intentionally set up that we bring everybody into awareness. And out of this group, I would say there was two distinct people that had the hardest time. And what's funny is those out of the group, the rest of us were having a completely different experience, because we were talking about how we grew so much from those relationships and how we were so amazing, and how we're in this place now where like we can spot where maybe this person patterns before maybe we let them into our life, and we make quicker decisions on getting people out of our life. And these two women were just there, and they were both talking about, well, he did this, and then he did this, and then he never did. You wouldn't believe what he did after that, and then this happened, and they just came to each other like two magnets. And I actually got to a point where I interrupted them and I said, ladies, I said, remember your purpose. Like, remember why you're here. You're here in this space to learn what we learned from those relationships. And that's actually really hard for people, because it puts them into a space of ownership. And it's easy to be the victim and to say, well, this happened and this happened and this happened and then this happened. But to actually put yourself into the position to say, I attracted this. It's a completely different mindset. And a lot of times people don't want to. They still want to think, this happened to me. Like, this person took advantage of me, this, and this. And they have all these stories. And the funny thing is, like, the more I tried to interrupt, the more this person tried to sell me on their story. And the more I interrupt, the more this person tried to sell me on their story. And it's literally, imagine breaking out of that mindset.
mm.
You have to take a choice to break out of that mindset and stop believing your own stories. And you have to realize, we call it when you start telling yourself story, really. Like, what's the truth in this? And what's happening right now? What's behind this? And it's getting that awareness. And a lot of people will dance around and they'll go all around what's happening, but they actually won't get to the heart of it. Because when they go to the heart of it, they realize that they're the ones who created that experience. So
Yeah.
how do you wake people up? Definitely sharing more stories, sharing more stories, also allowing people to have the space. If they don't know how to create that space for themselves, surround yourself by somebody else that is more awakened or has more experience or is able to be that light for you and be that guide for you until maybe you can figure it out for yourself.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. You know what? I think the biggest thing in these kind of relationships or these experiences or situations that you're going through in your life, it's getting stuck in the comfort zone. And when you're in the comfort zone, the change is the hardest part, because you're just so
Yeah.
used to that kind of lifestyle and those habits and the paradigm that you're living in, that for you to actually comprehend trying to change is really, that hurts.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's so much resistance. And so
Yeah.
that's definitely, you know, that comfort, that challenges most people. But
Yeah.
also, you know, I truly believe that you do attract the energy that you put out. You attract what you are,
Mm-hmm.
like completely, you know. And I never understood it. And now when I look back at all my relationships, I'm
It
like,
makes no
man.
sense.
And that's why for the last 2 years I've been single, and I'm not settling because I've still got a lot of work to do on myself,
Mm.
you know, because I
Yeah.
know the more that I grow, the more that I invest in myself and heal,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
you know, give attention to my own pain points and triggers and
Yeah.
stuff like that, the more
Oh,
empowered
absolutely.
I'm going to be, the more valuable I'm going to be, and the more I'm going to attract someone who is also vibrating on that kind of frequency, that has
Yeah.
put in the work to be their best self.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have a lady that I work with, and we did a 3-day intensive just a couple of weekends ago. And she was just like, Nisha, I'm just absolutely sick of attracting these guys. And she got to a place where she was just like, I want to sit down and figure everything out. And so we went through each relationship to figure out what was the lesson in everything, what were the triggers, and we really unpacked everything. And I don't think everybody has maybe a relationship coach or maybe somebody that's able to always hold that space. But it was definitely, I can tell you, by the time she was finished after the 3 days, not only was she transformed, but she just saw everything in this new way. Um and she's was worried now. Actually, she had a new fear that came up, and we talked about it. Well, what was that? She says, well, I've been doing all this work. Well, what if I don't find that person that's also doing all this work? And I said, you will, because now you just raised your consciousness, and you're going to now have people that have raised their consciousness. So it's inevitable. And that's the thing, like, as we become more aware and you start being around people that are more aware, you have to explain less because they get it too. You know what I mean? You just get it, and like you've done the same work, and you have a lot of the same experience or whatever. And I was saying to her, all you have to do is literally live your life. First of all, when I'm asking somebody to call in maybe their future love or whoever this person that is, I definitely make them connect to the feeling of what their presence is like. Like, what do you not everybody goes and says, okay, I want, this guy who looks like this and looks like that and makes this much money and has this job. And everybody's putting all these things externally. And I said, that's not what we're focusing on. We're focusing on, what do you want this person to feel like in your life? How do you want to be supported? How do you want to be loved? How do you want to, share your time together? Like, how do you want to learn together? How do you want to grow together? How do you want to fight? Like, how do you want to share your experiences? And that was the first time she'd had ever even taken the time to consciously think about that. And I said, well, the reason why you've been calling in all these people based on the quote unquote perfect bachelor is because you keep writing lists on all these things, and you keep getting that because that's what you've written, but you haven't written anything about the qualities. What is this person's heart like? Because when we sat down and we actually talked about what it is that was what she was missing, it was all about their qualities. She was never complaining about his job and how much money he made. She was always having issues with the qualities, how he was spending time with her, how she was being loved, how she was being cared for, how he didn't respond to her. And there was obviously a lot of stories that were in there as well. But once we cleared all those out and we realized what she's really looking for is a partner in life to love and care for her the same way that she wants to give love, you can attract that when you do the work and that person is equally doing the work. They're going to know your value, because that was what was hard. She was like, these guys don't even see how valuable I am. And I'm like, well, of course not, because they're just looking at you like you're this person, you have this job, and you make this much money, and they're also coming in looking at you superficially, and you're both looking at each other superficially, and you're waiting for some connection on a heart level to happen, but it can't. If you want to love consciously, you have to connect consciously. Does that make sense? So if as you grow your awareness, you will find that person who's also conscious and aware, and it's going to be easy.
Yeah. Nish, one thing that I truly believe in is, and I've said this many times, you know, I ask people when I talk to people about relationships, and I'm like, I'll tell you how to find the right person, or how to attract the right person. And they're like, oh, tell me, how do I do it? And I said, think about everything that you dream of in a person. Think about the way they look, think about the way they present themselves, their energy, their confidence, their, sexuality,
Mhm.
how, their health, the way they are kind, being loving, appreciating you. Think about everything that you would want in your relationship. And they're like, yeah, okay, I've done that. I'm dreaming now. I'm thinking in my mind about this dream person. And then I say, become that person. Become that person, and you will
Mhm.
attract
I like
that
that.
person. Become
Yeah.
everything that you want in someone else. Become that, and
Yeah,
you
I
will
like that.
attract that person.
Yeah.
And that's the process that I'm in right now.
That's awesome. I love it. That's so good. That's so good. Yeah. And what do you do when you start, working on yourself and then the other person isn't? And that was the situation with my client, is that she was actually taking the chance to up level her mindset
Mm.
and just kind of reevaluate her own personal goals and her relationship goals and everything like that. And instead of just writing this person off, I said, why don't you sit down and tell them what your plan is and how you are viewing relationships differently now, and send them to my 3-day retreat. No, I didn't say that. I said no, but I did say, just tell them how you're showing up now. And we scripted out what the conversation would be like, so there was nothing that was going to be like overwhelming. And what's nice about it is I've left it now where I'm like, only update me if you want me to. It's still new because it literally was just a couple weeks ago, but they're still in communication. So that was really good. And I look forward to seeing, how she shows up now differently in relationships,
But
and how she can attract and love differently based on changing herself. Yeah.
Nish, you mentioned something really powerful, and I know that there's a lot of people who are in relationships and who may be going through something like this as well. When you start developing yourself, focusing on yourself, growing yourself, and you start really investing in your own personal growth journey, but your
Mm-hmm.
partner
Yeah.
isn't on that level, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the most hardest things to do, because the whole point I see being in a relationship is about growing together,
Mm. Yeah.
supporting each other, being each other's, best friend, like to push each other higher and higher every day, and
Mm.
so if you're on a growth journey but your partner's not, there's going to be a disconnection, and eventually you're going to
Yeah.
start vibrating higher and it's going to fall apart, and that's the truth. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's super vital that if you start to want to grow, you need to communicate. That's the one thing
Yeah.
that I believe is uh, that forms a disconnection, is the lack of awareness of communication in the relationship,
Mm.
honesty, and being able to be open and supportive. And you know what? Sometimes that's going to happen. You're going to start growing. Your partner doesn't want to grow. She's in a comfort zone, or he's in a comfort zone, and
Yeah.
and it could also make the relationship fall apart. And you got to come to that realization that, you know what, maybe that's the way that it's supposed to be, because this
Mm-hmm.
is not what I want to settle for.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And if, for example, that person isn't ready to grow, you obviously are not going to, like, I've seen people in the past, and especially when it comes to your mindset early on when you're maybe developing it, to a strong mindset, I would say, is some people are just like, okay, well, I'm just not going to change. I'll just stay. And some people make that decision. They're
Yeah,
like, okay,
wow.
well, that person's not ready to grow. I just won't. But hopefully, if you are on that path of, of creating and growing your own awareness, if that person isn't ready, don't force them,
Yeah.
and you mentioned at the very beginning about how leading a life through inspiration, like that's what I like, that's my goal, is to like lead through inspiration, and to, like, as I grow, others grow around me, and as
Mm.
I change, others change around me, and just be the example. And if you do that, you naturally, especially if you start, maybe, at the beginning, maybe you're not cutting out your spouse because you have a partner, and you're not maybe cutting them out, but maybe you're making decisions around your friends, and you're starting to, maybe not associate as much with that one person. Your spouse or your partner is going to start realizing, wow, you're really serious about making these changes. And if that means maybe that relationship isn't in your life anymore, they're going to start thinking like, wow, mine might be next. Right? Like, that's the logical thought process on that. And so I have seen like a lot of success stories around that where both people start to grow, but it's not always the case, right? It's not always the case, and you'll know when that decision is there. I love to go with the saying. I think this was from the book, The Game of Life and How to Play It. If not, it was definitely Florence Shin, and she said the universe will make things so difficult that you'll be forced to make a decision, right? And so you'll know when that point is, when you've done every single thing that you can to try to, create the change that you want. And when you're not seeing those results, you've done it, and you just have to get to that surrender moment. And it's no longer for you to try to change or fix or anything. It's just time for you to, learn the lessons from that relationship and move on. And I just wanted to mention a point talking about people growing, to kind of go back to my ex-husband. So it's been, let's say 2000, and doing math right now, it's been over 10 years. Let's just say that. It's been over 10 years since we have not been together. And I always had thought, wow, this man will never change. This man will never change. He's going to be the same. I feel bad for his next wife. He's going to do the exact same thing. And little did I get proved wrong, but this man has not only changed and transformed, he had the best person. And his new wife now is absolutely an angel sent from heaven for him. And they grow and they challenge each other in ways that I could never have challenged him. And he is not only somebody that I value in my life, because we obviously have my son together, but I value him not only for the way that he's changed. He actually sat down and we had many discussions about how he's changed. And at first I was like, early on I was like, no, you can't change. But that he proved me wrong, and he really did. His whole heart changed, his whole mindset changed. And we really had this moment of kind of apologizing and appreciating each other. And it took 10 years. It took a long time to get there. And for so long, it was pretty rough afterwards. And it was not at all anywhere that we are now. And I never thought that I would be here. But like you said, as you start to change and you grow, he started doing a lot of self-reflection. Well, Nisha's growing, and he tells me, you're a completely different person now. And so he started to do his own self-development, and we share books and we share quotes and we share, oh, I'm reading about this author now. And, we're at a place now where I would say it's kind of the three of us. It's myself, him, and his wife now, who they've been married for 10 years. And we just try to cheer each other on in this conscious living and this mindset and this growth and living from a place of heart-centered and intuition. And I never thought in my entire life, leaving that situation, that I would allow this person back into my life in a new way, in a new relationship, not only as my, parent for my son, but that he could be, a friend, and that she could be a friend in my life.
Wow. That's really inspiring. And I'm sure that people who are listening to this would be inspired as well, because a lot of times when you go through experiences like that, you don't think that you could ever be friends with that person like that, or you could never kind of have that kind of relationship. And so that's really beautiful to see that it is possible. You can heal, you can change. But again, people around you, your environment plays a huge part in your influence, in your inspiration, in your positivity, in your awareness to say, okay, she's growing, she's changing, she's someone else. Maybe I can do something different in my life as well. And that's a perfect example of that. So that's awesome. And you know it, you have an impact on people. And so whoever you're connecting with, or whoever's you're coaching, or whoever your clients are, they're very blessed to have you in their life. So keep up the amazing work. And Nisha, I just want to, just to acknowledge you and appreciate you for your time and your energy,
You're the best.
Being on the podcast and sharing so much wisdom. I know that a lot of people are going to be inspired by your story. And let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Facebook. You can friend request me if you want. Follow my personal account. It's Neshea Hoshing. On Instagram right now, it's at Nisha Harvey, but that will change. So by the time this podcast is up, I'm sure it will be back to Neshea Neshea Hoshing. So it's Neeshea Hoshing, Hoshing. Yes, you can follow me there, and through my Instagram is probably the easiest. I have like my other, I have my link tree there, so you can follow me on other places. And yeah, I hope that I can be a dose of inspiration for your day.
Amazing, amazing. Now, just the last question. What's your definition of loving yourself?
Oh, I love this question. Um, Definition of loving yourself for me means being able to give yourself anything you want without any guilty pleasure, like any guilt surrounded by it. Like I love spoiling myself. I love using things that are luxurious and things that are and I tell myself that I'm worth it. Like literally I'll tell myself I'm worth it. And when I put something together for one of my clients and I told her how expensive, I said, you're gonna put this mask in your body and just say like let you know there's over $70 worth of essential oils in this, just this, and you're going to put it on your body once. She was like, what? And I said, because you're worth it. It's not about the dollars. It's about the fact that when you take care of yourself and you give yourself these experiences and you love yourself and there is no limit to how expensive you are, um, then yeah, just a reminder that you're worth it.
Love it. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Nish. Appreciate
You're
you.
welcome so much.